Waves. I'm gonna be completely honest with you all. Waves is probably one of my favorite game modes in all of AOTR. The reason I like it so much is because it lets you be creative. It gives you a chance to try builds, test different ideas, and use things you might not normally have access to in the base game. Kind of feels like a sandbox version of AOTR, minus the sandbox. You can experiment with perks, memories, artifacts, skills, blessings, and shifters, and every run is completely different, depending on your RNG. That's one negative, but we're not here to talk about negative. I think though that's what makes waves so fun. You can go in planning one thing, and the shop gives you something you don't need at all of a sudden you're playing a completely different game. It's one of those modes where you can spend hours playing, and somehow it feels like you've only been in there for a couple of minutes. But let me not bore you. Let's start with the basics. This is Waves. Your goal? It's simple. Defend your headquarters from waves of titans coming from the outside. The titans are gonna push forwards toward your headquarters, and when they reach it, they'll start hitting it. Same as a house, same as a wall. Your job is simple. Kill them before they kill you. That's the main idea of the mode. You survive waves, protect the base, build yourself up, and try to get as far as you can. Now, to make your life a little bit easier, inside the base, there are a few important things you need to understand. First, you have the blessings machine. I'm going to explain blessings properly later in the video because a lot of people said they struggled with that. But for now, we just know that this is a machine where you roll for blessings. Pretty self-explanatory. But just know that blessings are a major part of waves. And if you use them properly, they can make a huge difference. Then, here, you have your skill NPC. Very important NPC. Because this is where you'll make most of your build. You can upgrade your ODM gear, equip your perks, skills, memories, artifacts. Basically, it's where you equip your build. So, if you're going to buy something from the market or get a skill crate, this is where you go to equip that. Then over here, you have base upgrades. Yeah, it's where you upgrade your base. You can buy refills for your team, increase the total base HP, upgrade base regeneration, and use replenish to heal if the base gets too low. This is really important, especially later in the run, because Titans can start doing a lot more damage. If your team ignores base upgrades for too long, you could be doing fine individually and still lose because the base gets destroyed. So make sure everyone is paying attention to this. Next, you have the market. I'll go into the market in a bit more detail later, but basically, this is where you buy most of the stuff you need for your build. This includes perks, memories, artifacts, and shifting items such as serums or shards. The market is extremely important because it resets every wave, meaning every wave gives you a new chance to buy something useful. Understanding the market is one of the biggest parts at getting better at waves, because your build depends heavily on what you buy and how well everything stacks together. You've also got this person in a tent over here. She heals your injuries. So like if you break your leg or something, you can spend gold and not have a broken leg anymore. But to be honest, it's waves. Most of the time you'll be fine. Still, useful information to know. And then over here is your crate drop-off. Every wave, somewhere on the map, a skill crate will spawn. And later on in the run, skill crates might not actually spawn. It'll appear like a little circle with your PFP on it, and the outline will show the crate's rarity. The rarities go gray, green, blue, purple, gold, and then red. The higher the rarity, the better the skill can be. The ones you really want to look out for are the gold and red crates, because those are where you can get the stronger legendary and mythic family skills. Once you pick up a crate, you still need to bring it back to this spot and drop it off. Otherwise, you won't actually get the skill. Blessings. Blessings come from this machine, the blessing machine. And when you roll, there are 5 possible results: body, offense, defense, support, or no reward. Each blessing slot has 3 blessing spaces, which upon rolling, you can only obtain 1. And the blessings shown in those spaces cycle every wave. This means the blessing machine is constantly changing, so don't roll it the second your waves run starts. A really important thing to understand is that you can lock blessings. When you lock a blessing, it stays locked for 5 waves, and then unlocks itself after that. But you can still lock it again if you want to keep it for longer. This is important because the best way to use this machine is not to roll randomly. You want to wait until every slot is locked with blessings that are actually good for your build. The reason for this is that every time you successfully get a blessing, the roll price increases. So if you roll too early or when the machine has terrible blessings, you can waste a lot of gold on something that doesn't help you or your team. I don't think I want 3 Bomb Squad blessings. And then the shop. Every wave, the shop resets. This applies to every part of the shop, except for the shifter shop. So, perks, memories, and artifacts. Each section gives you a few items every wave, usually around 4 or 5 of that stock's items, so maybe the perk has 4 perks. But then there's also 9 crates every wave. Apparently there's a thing, it's like a 0.001% chance, but you might get a wave where a shop doesn't have any crates. I don't know if I believe that though. So there are 9 crates, and every wave you can buy those 9. When you open one, you'll get a random item from that specific crate type. So if you open a perk crate, you'll get a random perk. And if you open a random memory crate, you'll get a random memory. And so on. It's good to understand the rotation so you don't miss any of your crates or even specific perks that might be stocked. And this is probably the most important part. Everything stacks. Blessings, memories, perks, artifacts, all the buffs and stats they give you stack, meaning you can equip multiple of them and have their effects increased by each other. I noticed I didn't mention the shifter shop, but pretty much every 10 waves after you defeat a boss, that will stock the serum of the boss you fought and 3, 4, or 5 shards of that titan. However, there is a 10% chance that it stocks a colossal serum with 3, 4, or 5 colossal shards. For example, if you have an attack titan, when you defeat him, the next 10 waves will have 90% chance an attack serum with X amount of shards, and 10% chance a colossal serum with also X amount of shards. Something else I should mention is that the buffs from the base game, when it comes to waves, don't really get carried over. The only thing that does is your family stats and all of your boosts, XP, luck, and gold. So if you want to play waves, the perks, memories, and artifacts you have equipped right now don't do anything. This is why a lot of people in LFG servers ask you if you have Fritz or Hellos, because they give the most passive stats. I see a lot of people ask about builds. So what's the build? What's the one for all build that you can use anywhere? And all I have to say is that even with a great build, with the best ODM player in the world, and all the greatest skill, you need the entire team to be there. If not, you're always going to be dragged down. You need each member to understand the game and pull their weight. I'm not going to go over the specific builds in this video, but I'll discuss what each does. Once you start getting into late game waves, the way teams are built become a lot more structured. Early on, you can kind of experiment with anything. Random perks, random memories, different skills, a couple artifacts, and see if it works. But later on, when the waves get higher and the titans start scaling harder, your team needs proper roles. And this is where a lot of new players can get confused, because they hear people talk about roles like DPS, Colossal, Lore, Buffer. You might not always know what those roles actually are meant to do. The simplest way to explain it is late game waves is not just about everyone doing random damage. Each player has a job, and the stronger your team gets, the more important those jobs become. Let's start with DPS. DPS stands for damage per second, and in waves, this basically means that the DPS's job is to deal as much consistent damage as possible. This is especially important later on because Titans and bosses start getting way tankier. If your DPS doesn't have enough damage to defeat the boss, well, there's nothing you can really do. A good DPS build needs to stack properly. You need your perks, memories, and artifacts, blessing, and family stats to work together. It's why a lot of players struggle with high damage, because they might have something that can do damage, but they don't know how different perks and artifacts work together. Then we have a Colossal. The Colossal is literally just there to clear the ad waves, or, pure Titans. Pretty much the Colossal will stand in the middle of the base and clear all the waves that aren't boss waves. Of course, pure Titans spawn in boss waves, they still have to clear those, but their job is just getting rid of pure Titans. So you want to build around things that increase your shifter damage so you can deal more damage to those scaled up Titans that spawn in later on waves. A very important thing to remember is if you're Colossal, do not use Founder's Blessing. You may think it's good because it increases Titan's stats, which is clearly damage, but it's only 15% extra damage. War Chief gives you more than that. The reason it's kinda detrimental is because it gives you aggro range. And if the Colossal takes aggro on a boss wave from the lore, who we will get to in a second, it can destroy the whole run. So, as a Colossal, you just focus on the pure Titans and make sure they don't touch the base. Then there's the lore. Now, the lure's job is pretty simple. You lure the boss. So, lore, more often than not, uses the female Titan, because the female Titan has a skill, Shriek, which gets the aggro of everything around her. A good lure can save a run. Even if the team has good damage, if the boss isn't being controlled properly, the base can still get destroyed. So if you're new to waves, think of lore as the person responsible for keeping the boss busy, away from headquarters. Then we've got the buffer. Last, but most certainly not least. The buffer's job is to make the rest of the team stronger. And remember, the DPS, while they can build lots of damage, their damage eventually caps. So the buffer's job is to make sure that that damage keeps increasing every wave. So they can still deal damage to the, wave 180, 190, 200 boss. The buffer's job is usually less complicated, especially building it, but it's still very important. The buffer usually uses the mythic and legendary buffs to help boost the team's damage, but you have to remember that even with those skills, if the buffer doesn't have black and red flares, the buffer is pretty much useless. So your buffer isn't your main damage dealer, they're just there to make sure everyone else is dealing their damage. So when you're a buffer, don't think that you need the cool mythic skills or to do some flashy stuff like the DPS and go flying around the base. It may be a boring job, but without you, the whole run could be lost. The reason I'm explaining this slowly is because I think it's valuable for newer Waves players to understand what roles actually do, and their jobs for the Waves run, just to get you on your feet and started learning the game. So, let me simple it down. DPS, your main damage dealer. They are just there to kill the boss quickly. Your Colossal is your clearer. They take care of the ad waves, the pure titans, make sure that nothing else gets on the base. Your Lure is your boss controller, the person who makes sure the boss doesn't run to the base and destroy it in one hit. Trust me, later on, that happens. And your Buffer, your team support, the person who makes sure everyone is dealing more damage, so the higher waves are possible. Once you understand that, late game waves makes a lot more sense. It's not just four people doing whatever they want. Waves is a team game where everyone has a purpose. Every member needs to pull their weight to ensure victory. And if every role does their job properly, the run becomes way smoother. The Lure keeps the boss away, the Colossal clears the waves, the Buffer supports the team, and the DPS melts the boss HP. That's why late game waves is so fun. It becomes less about random builds and more about teamwork, planning, understanding how each role fits into the run. So, if you're new at waves, don't stress if this sounds like a lot at first. Start by learning what each role is supposed to do. And then once you understand the job, you can start learning the builds behind it. All the builds require an amount of knowledge and skill. Sure, you can look up the builds on YouTube, maybe watch our next video to learn what they are, or the AoT Discord server. But the reason people are on the leaderboard is because, if I'm being honest, they know how to revive a run when it's completely fallen apart. To be the best at waves, you need to know what to do when there's no Colossal in stock for 70 waves, 80, maybe even 90. When the DPS doesn't get any of their perks, or the Buffer doesn't have any mythic buffs. Then again, sometimes you have to let go to gain something valuable. Some runs are designed to lose, and it sucks. But with enough time, work, and practice, young man, you too can reach leaderboards.